Back to another live on Wednesday night. Today I'm going to be interviewing Agyeman, the MD of Access UK. I originally had decided to promote this day to looking at talking about black businesses, but I didn't get that many DMs about it. So I thought, okay, I'll just respond to what the audience wanted, and loads of people were asking me a bit more about Access UK and how they can get involved. And so I thought, let's just have a full interview with Nana so that we can find out, I already know, but you can find out more about his social entrepreneur. So he's joining now. If you're watching this on the playback, you can skip forward a minute.
What's happening? What's happening? You all right?
Yeah, good. I was just doing a little brief about why we decided to go ahead today, because obviously last week we had said that what we were going to be doing is talking about and promoting black businesses, but because I didn't get like loads of people kind of putting their business forward, but I did get a lot of people asking about what it is you do and wanting to know more about Access UK. Obviously we've just decided let's give them an insight into the journey of becoming a social entrepreneur. So at the top end, do you want to just explain a little bit about Access UK now and what a social entrepreneur is?
So a social entrepreneur is one who's in the business of providing social solutions to social problems or socio-economic problems. So I'm not selling like trainers or clothes. What I'm doing is providing solutions as a business to social problems.
Yeah,
that's essentially what essentially what a social entrepreneur is.
Yeah. Do you want, just in case people don't know, you want to give a bit of examples about what type of social problems may be able to be fixed through a business structure like yours?
It could be anything. It could be the environment. It could be inventing something that can be like, for example, I don't know, converting something that's readily available in a poor country, or converting it into another use. Anything around those lines. So we could be here forever, kind of giving examples, but that's essentially it. Anything that involves solving a social problem, a socio-economic problem. That could be anything.
Do you want to explain the social problem that Access UK solves?
So we essentially deal with black youth unemployment. That's our core business. Black youth unemployment and everything else that comes in between it. So that we focus on the 3 E's, which is education, employment, and enterprise, as the 3 core solutions to help young black people. So like, for example, when I started Access, or when me and Chris and Kobe started Access back in 2013, I believe, 1 in 2 young black people in the UK were unemployed. And that figure has remained consistent for lots and lots of years. So yeah, that's on average, 1 in 2 young black people in the UK are unemployed.
Okay. And so obviously I know, but for the people kind of listening, what was your background before you decided to become a social entrepreneur? What industry were you in?
Professionally, I've done some youth work, and I also worked for a company called Ingeus, who initially were called Work Directions, then they changed their name to Ingeus. What they do was they helped the long-term unemployed back into work. So this, it's a private company, but they had government contracts specifically helping, the long-term unemployed into work. So I got my grounding, professional grounding from there. I was there for like 10 odd years. It was my first proper job. Prior to that, I was a youth. I've done a lot of voluntary youth work, and the other stuff we won't go into. But professionally, that's what I've done. That's my grounding.
Excellent. And so, what point you worked there for quite a while, and obviously it was quite a good job, right? So, what point did you kind of discover your purpose of building like Access and giving back in that way?
My purpose for, sorry?
building access and giving back in that way? At what point did you discover that?
Do you know what? What sparked it was the 2011 riots. That's what initially sparked it. So I've always been passionate. I've always been into that community stuff and all that thing, but it was not, I didn't, in terms of monetizing and setting up a business, that came off the back of the riot. So essentially, so you know, I've got lots of friends, family in Tottenham. I went to school in North London. So I was kind of in the same circles as, you know, Mark Duggan anyway. Yeah. So that from a personal level, there was that interest. Also, there was one second, B. 1 second. Got his computer talking to me here. 1 second. Right. Turn that off, yeah. So, yeah, from the personal level, like I said, I knew, you know, the situation surrounding the whole thing. And on a professional level, I was commissioned to do some work on the causes of the riots, you know, because Mark Duggan's killing was just a spark. There was underlying stuff that was going on from way back when. Remember, Tottenham has seen 2 riots, 2 uprisings that all related to social conditions, you understand? So when I was given the opportunity to study the reasons for the riots, the socio-economic stuff, that's when I came across all these crazy stats of, you know, 1 in 2 unemployed, the disproportionality in terms of incarceration rates, you know, issues with the police, all these things came about from the report. And then it was a case of I realized that, hold on, I'm part of a system that's meant to be solving these issues, but actually is not fit for purpose. Do you know what I mean? Even though it's a good company that I work for, I know from the inside that it's not structured to deal with these issues that I'm now coming across through my research. So that's what gave me the business idea to think, you know what, actually, it might be a good idea to set up something that's more kind of tailored to deal with the issues that our youth face. Do you know what I mean? That's over and above just careers and guidance and getting someone a job. Dealing with the real systemic stuff. So that's what the whole idea for Access came about. And obviously Access stands for African Caribbean Careers and Employment Support Services UK. That's the acronym for it. And we do exactly what it says on the tin. Yeah.
So obviously that's a big transition though, because you're going from working for someone else that, you know, there's a certain structure in place there, a certain level of security in place there as well. I know that you already had a lot of financial responsibility at that time. So what were the doubts that you had when you first discovered the idea to get from that point to kind of inception? What were the doubts that you had to overcome?
Well, you know what? First of all, when we started, because I had a focus on Black people, I knew there wasn't going to be lots of people waiting by my door to, you know, drop me sackloads of money to invest in it. So initially I looked at funding, I looked at, you know, getting like grants, etc., but it wasn't very fruitful. So at the time, you know, I was heavily into property, you know, the buy-to-lets at the time, you know, I was heavily into that, so on the side. So I decided to remortgage one of my properties, but it didn't work because it was a time of credit crunch and it was very, very difficult financially. So in the end, I decided to sell one of my properties and I invested some of the proceeds into the business startup of Access. So, you know, it was obviously a very big decision to make. So I invested, so literally in the first year, maybe year and a half, we never got money from anybody. Literally, it was like my investment, a seed funding. We started, we basically, you know, made ourselves be known in the local area, done lots of great work. And after that, that's when obviously the investors and, you know, different commissioners started coming through the door. But we had really done a lot of work in the area, essentially for free as an organization, funded purely by myself. And obviously me and Chris and Kobe had done a lot of the lead work initially before obviously we started getting our major contracts.
Yeah. And that's obviously, I mean, obviously not everyone's going to be in a position to do that. But it's a huge sacrifice to kind of make to put into a business, which I know is very common, whether you're a social entrepreneur or an entrepreneur in, you know, a different remit or sector. But prior to that, so one of the things that went through your mind, and I'm just trying to, what I'm trying to do is kind of get the information from you before you made that decision to actually invest in it, because if there's someone watching this back and they're having doubts going through their mind, what I want is for them to see the doubts that are normal, that are part of the process when you go for starting your own business. Like for myself, like I didn't want to do this business for visibility. I hate people knowing my business, for instance. Yeah. So one of the things that was going through my mind was like, I don't want to be known like, do you know what I mean? I don't want to be known like that, where everyone knows me and everyone say something about me or whatever. It was just one of the things that get me. So what else were you dubious about? So one, obviously, people are not really gonna, like you said, bite your hand off to fund a black organisation. But what else were the things when you're kind of looking at the SWOT analysis, you were a bit like, this could happen as well? Do you get what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, it was a calculated risk. It was not just a throw in the dark. First of all, look, let's make it clear. I want to advise everybody watching this to go and sell their property, to go invest in a business. Yeah, that's the first thing I want to make clear. It's not a model. It's not a model that I would advise. Just believe me on that. I don't want anyone to come after me and say, look, that Nana told me to go, sell my house, and look what happened now. So
this is what I'm trying to get. That's the real side. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So it was a calculated risk. The reason why it was a calculated risk was this. I knew there was a huge demand. There was huge a gap in the market for that service. So at a purely non-emotional level, there was a business case for it. Yeah. Because all the data said it. All the data was clear. Because what you have is that you have mainstream providers that are there, that are existing in the market, but they're not offering culturally bespoke or tailored solutions for a young black person, right? Yes. So you've got usual people doing CVs, you've got usual recruiters, right? You've got all these people in the market, but they're not designed to address the specific challenges that young black people face, right? Yeah. So on a business level, there was a real business case to set up access based on that alone. So it was clear. So I knew that down the line, even though I had invested a lot of money into the startup, I knew that I'd get that money back. Okay. And you know what? And my calculation came through, because our first major contract, a big proportion of that money came back from the investment. Yeah. And as I say, the rest is history. The rest is history. But it's taken a long time to build up to where we are now, where we're recognized as a go-to organization for specifically that. Yeah. I mean, when we started, we're lucky to get £1 donation from anybody. Obviously, we're structured as a social enterprise and a charity, so it's like a business and a charity mixed up together. But on the charitable side, zilch. Now, what's funny is that 7, 8 years on, we had like an influx of support when George Floyd got killed. Right? So this is literally a seed that was planted 7 years ago, and it's only borne fruit now in terms of donations, because obviously people made a connection. What I assume happened was that they'll go to Google, put in black charities or black social enterprises. We were kept on popping up. It was directly linked in to those issues that, in America with George Floyd. And a lot of people were then, supporting, corporates were, hitting us up and all these things. But the irony of it is, when we started, and a lot of people knew that we had that focus on black people, lots of people were saying to me, that's crazy. Like, why are you doing that for? What's the point? Going back to our conversation from before, it's more of a case of, if you have no respect for yourself or no self-love, you would question why somebody would sell their property and invest money into a social enterprise for young black people. You would. But I knew that everything was as they say, patterned up to be fruitful down the line. Yeah. So I guess then advice for anyone wanting to become a social entrepreneur as well is, although
it needs to be a cause that you're passionate about, especially if you're going down the route of getting government funding. It also has to be a cause that fits in with their agenda, would you say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't go in to the third sector with just passion alone. It's not going to work. The first thing you should think about, putting the passion aside, the first thing you should think about is, how do I monetize what I'm doing? Yeah. Anybody that comes to me who's got an idea or a business idea in terms of the first sector, that's the first question I ask them. How do you monetize that? Because gone are the days where you can get grants, even though the black organizations don't get no grants anyway, you know, in terms of that proportion of the pie. Gone are the days where you can rely on that to sustain your business or your social enterprise. So you have to really look at how you monetize that. Yeah, as a social entrepreneur. Once you know and you identify who your customers are, then you can go to work. Because in many social enterprises like Access UK, I call it a triangle. It's a triangulated model. What you have is, you have the service provider, which is ourselves. You have the beneficiary who is not paying for the service directly. Yeah. So you've got two people. Then the third person is the one who's paying for that relationship. Yeah. You understand? So your customer, you've got two customers essentially. You've got a beneficiary who's accessing the service. Then you've got a third person who's financing that relationship. So that might be a local authority. That might be central government. That might be a corporate. That might be whoever, but they're paying for that relationship. So for instance, our first contract was funded by the DWP, which is the Department for Work and Pensions. Yeah. Local level, that's a job center. Yeah. So what a job center did was that a contract was that they will refer, I think the first one was like minimum 100 young black unemployed people to come to us essentially, so we can help them into work. Yeah. So it's a very specific contract looking at black youth unemployment. Yeah. And again, even that alone, some people are saying, well, you know, how do you even get a contract that focuses on blacks alone? And I thought to myself, that's because you haven't done your research. If you know the disproportionality in unemployment, do you know why we've done it that way and why they had no choice but to sanction the contract? So, yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess that's no different than if you're looking at the private sector. You've always got in every company an internal and an external customer, don't you? And your internal customer is who you're serving, and your external customer is obviously who you're gaining money from. That's why, so if anyone listening from the private sector, it's why he's saying you have to have a business case, because your external customer is not going to pay for you to do what you want to do just because you want to do it. It has to fit in something that they need to fit their agenda. Just like in any other business, no one's going to buy a product that they don't need. And so when you're looking at like government bodies, when Nana's talking about doing the research, it's because you need to know that that's what that customer, i.e. funder, is looking to buy, looking to put
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you know what, let me make a little caveat as well, because I think word terminology is very important. Yes. A lot of the stuff we have, a lot of the work we do is contracts, it's not funding. There's a slight difference. There's a slight difference between funding model and a contracting model. So a contracting model, as social entrepreneurs, is more of a commercial. So for instance, someone would say, okay, we're going to give Access UK 200 grand contract, okay? Not funding, contract. So that means that you have to deliver a certain amount of work and outputs to get that money. That money is ring fenced for you, but if you don't deliver, you don't get paid. Yeah. So you're talking about... You don't get paid. Yeah, yeah. So that's what I advocate. That's what I advocate. And I think a lot of our people are scared of that because they've always been getting money off rhetoric, what we're going to do or what our aspirations are rather than reality. But where I came from, the private sector, I was accustomed to that. I was accustomed to doing something and getting paid for it. Yeah. So, you know, that model was I was accustomed to that model of working. And it works on the basis of you will get initial, obviously, payment to cover your core costs, but everything else, I'll say about 70% of it is all related to what you actually do. So if that auditor comes in and they realize that actually, you know what, this guy's gone and bought himself like a new Range Rover or something, or a new like Rolex, and there's nothing's happening here, your money gets dried up. Yeah. You know, that's it. So it's all to do with actually doing what you're saying you're going to do, rather than just, you know, giving a nice little speech and then getting that money. Yeah, yeah, definitely. So, and the thing is as well, I think that another reason, let's be honest about, you know, why that would work better for an organisation that is led and owned by Black people is because there is, first of all, there's discrimination towards funding Black organisations, but there also is that a distrust as well between Black organisations and all of these contractors and funders. So when you go in with the model of, you know what, pay me by results, then it kind of really minimises and almost, it pretty much dissipates the risk on their part, you know. 100%, 100%. Because you have to understand the mindset of these quote unquote funders and commissioners. Yeah. Yeah, and there has been a lot of cowboys in our community that have done a lot of funny little things, but everyone has. Of course, yeah. But we as Black people, exactly. We as Black people, we as Black people get punished for it, you know, properly. So where I've come into the market, to the tail end of the market, as it were, you know, I was one of those people that witnessed the difference in how, you know, Black-led organizations were treated. And the lack of funding or the lack of contracts that they get. So for me, it was clear the solution was all about, okay, show and prove. They talk about track record. They talk about track record in this sector. And initially I didn't understand it. So we were making applications for like 200K, 300K. And I was thinking, hold a minute, I've got the personal track record to do this work, but I didn't understand why I was getting knocked back. The reason why I was getting knocked back was they're not going to give a new startup, especially a Black-led startup, that kind of money with no quote-unquote track record as an organization. So I knew then that we had to build up our reputation before we could go for those figures. You know, that's something that I learned by default. That's something I learned by default. So that's one of the lessons that I'll tell people is like, make sure when you start, you don't start going for these big figures. Just go for, you know, probably like your 10Ks, your 20Ks, up to about 30. Obviously go for different pots to build that money up, but don't go for any more than that, because you're not gonna get it. You need to build up your reputation, you need to build up your track before you can start going for these bigger funding and bigger contracts. Yeah. Also as well, and again, just to kind of speak on it as to why that definitely makes sense, it's exactly the same as if you went to try to go for a mortgage, but you've never had any credit before, you're going to get knocked back. Do you get what I mean? And it's the same kind of way. So you're applying for smaller pots and working your way up is like building your credit rating in the voluntary sector, isn't it? Like amongst those people. 100%, 100%. I mean, look, as I always say to you, B, look, our people, a lot of us are financially illiterate. We just never taught these basic stuff in school. And a lot of us, like myself, I learned a lot of these things by default. Obviously, I have my background in property acquisitions as well. But in terms of, you know, these things, like you just said, a lot of people don't know it. A lot of people don't know these things. And I wish I had, at the time, a mentor that was guiding me to kind of help me to circumvent all these issues. This is the reason why I make it a point of helping people now, because I always think, what if I had a mentor guiding me, I would have made half of the certain mistakes that I made. And it was not a lot of mistakes, but I didn't make certain mistakes. That's definitely one of them, because I was literally paying money out for bid writers to write bids, but they should have known that we were never going to get that money. But they took my money anyway. They took my money through my naivety and lack of experience in that sector. They took my money and then nothing came back. But then I soon copped on, okay, this is the reason why nothing's coming back, because we're new. We're new. And you have to build up the trust, you have to build up the track record so you can go for the big money afterwards. Yeah, exactly. And so obviously, you know,
it was quite a while before you got your first contract, before you started to see like a proper return on the initial investment you've made. But who were your biggest supporters, would you say? And like, what were the key things they were doing that are necessary if you're going to become a social entrepreneur?
Well, first of all, I had, you know what, it was there was specific individuals that actually helped us to connect locally, like for example in Haringey. Yeah, so some of my guys who lived in Haringey, who were in the area, you know, people like my guy, you know, Courtney Dread, you know, he done a lot of groundwork for me. You know, a few of my trustees done a lot of groundwork for me. So just connecting the dots helped me to helping us to embed ourselves in the community. So we had a lot of support like that. But overall, in terms of our community, there was hardly any help. I'll be blunt, you know, I was quite shocked. There's hardly any support really from our community. But I didn't, because I understood the reason why there was a lack of support. I didn't take it personally. Yeah. Because I knew I had a solid business case anyway that will eventually sort itself out. So in terms of support through like donations and things like that, my biggest donors for a very long time were Europeans, white people. You know, that's a fact. You know, it's a fact. Like, in fact, I think that there was for a very long time, it was a German guy in Germany. I didn't know, to this day, I don't know how he discovered us. It must have been through Google or something. And I never bothered to ask him why he was donating. As long as he donated, I was cool. You know, so he was donating for a very long time, supporting us, you know, checking up on what we were doing. So that was very, very helpful. But for many, many years, we hardly got any support from our people. But we kept on plugging away. The contracts came in, and then it became a self-financing entity anyway. So it was neither here or there to me. Yeah.
But going back now, so what type of support would have been really good at the beginning? So if anyone's thinking about becoming a social entrepreneur and they've got time to kind of outsource certain connections or like people in their network, who would you say is good to align yourself with at the start of a journey to social entrepreneurship?
Look, the first thing you should do is do your research, see who else is doing similar things.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the first thing. I mean, especially for black people, this advice I give to black people is don't go in with that whole I can save the world by myself mentality, because it doesn't make any sense. Socially or business-wise, it doesn't make any sense. Identify who not your competitors are, who your comrades are, who your people that do similar things. So when we start Access, one of the things I've done in the first year was map out complementary services. So for instance, I know that mental health is a big problem in our community, or mental ill health. Yeah. So I was looking for culturally competent mental health practitioners that we could refer some of our beneficiaries to. Yeah. Right? Because not just about anyone can get a job, but if you don't deal with some of the underlying issues, it's not going to be sustainable. Yeah, it's not going to be sustainable. So that's one example. Then you get people, for example, like business trainers. We identify a lot of black business trainers that teach you the fundamentals of running a successful business. And so we built up over the years, built up a huge network all across the country of different providers, right? That do different things. And the irony of it is, with COVID-19 and everyone working virtually now, we can connect those dots even better. So I could have somebody who is in Birmingham delivering stuff for me, doing some work for Access from there, or from America, or whoever, because everything's virtual. So that's even brought the importance of networking even, you know, it's become even more apparent. We must network, we must connect the dots. But having that awareness of who does what and what their specialism is and how it complements what we specialize in is crucial. Yeah.